I'm calling this meeting of the Silver City Town Council to order. The Girl Scouts of the Desert Southwest and their leaders, led by Ms. Annette Toney, will present the colors and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Just 1 second.
Girl Scout attention. Color guard, advance. Color guard, hold. Color guard, honor your colors. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Girl Scout promise?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
My honor, I will strive to serve God and my country, to help people at all times, and to live by the Girl Scout promise. Color guard, post your colors. Color guard, dismiss.
On behalf of the City Council and the town, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. Especially like to welcome Chief Patillo. And I'd like to thank the Girl Scouts because last Saturday for Territorial Charter Days at the Murray Hotel, they sang quite a few songs that had a New Mexico flavor to them. They sang the official New Mexico song, and they sang about 10 or 12, is that right, Annette? Songs about New Mexico that was written by Mrs. Thompson, who is a former teacher in our area. So thank you all very much for doing that. It was an outstanding event that you presented us with. The next item on the agenda is changes to the agenda. Do any of the councils want to make changes? The next item on the agenda is proclamations. And since March 10 through 16, 2019, is Girl Scout Week, the town would like to recognize this with a proclamation. I'd also like to recognize Councilor Cano and Councilor Beddiston. Both are also Girl Scouts, and I think Councilor Beddiston will be coming down with me to make the presentation.
want to be in front of the podium or behind it?
You're good there.
Big horseshoe, okay? Right here. Okay. Let me reach it properly. Little girls in front.
Is everybody ready?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, for letting me read this. Whereas March 12th, 2019 marks the 107th anniversary of Girl Scouts of the United States of America, founded by Julia Gordon Low in 1912 in Savannah, Georgia, and whereas throughout its distinguished history, Girl Scouting has inspired millions of girls and women with the highest ideals of courage, confidence, and character, and whereas girls discover, connect, and take action to make their local communities and the world a better place, and whereas more than 3.2 million current Girl Scout members nationwide will be celebrating 107 years of this American tradition with 59 million women who are former Girl Scouts, that includes Counselor Cano and myself, and living proof of the impact of this amazing movement. Now therefore, I'm not Ken Ladner, so...
I, Ken Ladner, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Silver City, Grant County, New Mexico, do hereby applaud the commitment Girl Scouting has made to America's girls and proudly proclaim the week of March 10 through 16, 2019 as Girl Scout Week.
Can we get you in our picture there?
And Councilor Patterson?
Now, holding cookies, so I'll have
Would you like to make a few comments?
Okay, so while I'm making a couple comments, girls, go ahead and take your pictures, okay? So I just want to say Girl Scouts is for all girls anywhere from 5 to 18. So as soon as they enter kindergarten, they can join and be a Girl Scout. If you know of a girl who wants to do this, please send them my way. We're in the phone book under Girl Scouts. Phone number is 538-2481. What else do you want to know about Girl Scouts? The past mayor was made an honorary Girl Scout. We didn't end it 1 year. I don't know what else. Thanks to the community for buying cookies, because cookies is what pays for all the girls' uniforms. Put all their insignia on there, the things on the back, all their earned patches, the badges on the back of their vest. That's for all the fun things they do. The ones on the front are things they have to earn. And they have to do five different things to earn every badge that they get. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is council comments. First, Councilor Amon Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to thank you, Girl Scouts, for these cookies. You gave me my favorites. And it's probably other councilors will speak about this too, but I just want to give a shout out to all of the members of the Territorial Charter Day Committee. It was lovely, brisk, but a lovely day. Fun events downtown and a great Territorial Charter Day. So thank you all.
Councilor Patterson.
I too would like to thank the Girl Scouts for these wonderful cookies. It's always so exciting to be able to stand up and say, along with Councilor Cano, that we're former Girl Scouts, but always a Girl Scout, right? Once a Girl Scout, always a Girl Scout. So, and I would also like to echo what Councilor Amon Smith said. It was a great Territorial Charter Day. The ball was fabulous, and I just it was just a wonderful time. It was a really great event, and so thankful to all the volunteers that helped make the day something where we can really celebrate our charter. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kama?
Thank you, Mayor. I too like to thank the Girl Scouts, when they've all left already. They seem to always know which ones are our favorites, which is kind of cool. I just wanted to take a second to thank the mayor and his wife for all that they do. They are at every event, and they stay for all of them, and they participate in everything, and, you know, they're leading by example, and I really appreciate that. So thank you to you, Mayor Ladner, and to Becky, too, for what you do.
Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor Carroll did mention to you people about, she couldn't imagine herself being that small a long time ago. And she's just, look at her now. But anyway, I want to give thanks to Alfred Cedillos from the Sun Valley. He's the one that gave us a POW flag for the capilla. And if people have gone by, I think it looks very, very nice, and there is a lot of traffic up there, a lot of traffic. And I know the city, and thank you, Mr. Brown, I know they're doing a lot of work up there, which is very, very nice of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council comments? I'd like to thank my wife too. She's an amazing person. And I'd also like to thank the town, Alex and Mr. Marshall, for all the work they did in making the inside of the Murray Hotel available to everybody. I know it took a lot of work, but it was fantastic, and I think you made a great model of what the entrance to that ballroom should look like. But anyway, thank you very much for all of your help and support. We couldn't have done it without that. Next item on the agenda is approval of minutes of the February 12, 2019 regular meeting. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of the regular council meeting of the town of Silver City of February 12th, 2019.
Is there a second? Councilor Madison?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is public input, but I see that no one signed up, so we'll go to item number 8, which is reports. The first report is a report of the High Desert Humane Society's annual report by Ms. Heidi Ogos.
Good evening, councilors, staff, mayor. Thank you for having me once again to give you the annual report of the High Desert Humane Society. You should have a sheet that was handed out that has the annual animal intake for the town of Silver City. And I'm not going to read through all the numbers on that, but I'll just go over the totals quickly, because this sheet does break down the impound, stray, and owner turn-in animals that are taken in. And we did take in a total of 399 dogs from the city and a total of 477 cats. We also collected impound fees of $2,575 and $5,565.55 in licenses. And the reason that license number is a little bit odd, since it's only in even numbers, as we do occasionally have people that purchase their licenses through PayPal. So that's a little bit of a different charge there. As a whole, the animal shelter, our Paws Cause thrift store, which I'll talk a little more about in just a moment, we were able to issue out 891 spay and neuter coupons, and we had a total of 393 dogs that got adopted, 229 that were returned to owners, and 145 cats that were adopted, and only 3 cats that were returned to owners. Unfortunately, that's just not a big number there. Cats just don't, I guess people don't think that their cats would be at the shelter, and so we don't have a lot of return to owners. On the other side of the sheet, you have an annual comparison that goes back to 2007, and at the bottom, a graph You can see that the dogs are pretty stabilized in their intake. However, the cats went up quite a bit. We've had a pretty good increase in the cat numbers. Any questions?
Councilman Smith?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Olaf, there is an uptick in cats coming in. Could you give the reasoning for that, please?
Yes, the town of Silver City has a very active animal control officer who has really been making a strong effort to address the feral cat populations. And she has been really bringing in a lot of the feral cats.
Let me ask you a question. So that uptick primarily represents feral cat clutches that have been brought in.
Yes.
And feral cats mean that there might have been generations of cats that were born kind of in the wild and not been
Yes.
as part of the domestic family.
Yes, yes, feral cats unfortunately have a very different personality than most of the cats that are born into a domestic household.
And I know that you have spoken about this briefly in other instances, but can you talk a little bit about the feral cat population and the best ways to perhaps control it?
Unfortunately, the best ways to control it is to trap the animals. Our current ordinance in our community does not allow for what they call the trap, neuter, and release. The ordinance doesn't allow for re-releasing those animals into the wild, and they have found in other communities that actually does not really reduce the animal population. And there's still a lot of risk. These animals are left to fend for themselves. They're hit by cars. They have disease. There's nobody managing their vaccinations. They can bite. They kill wildlife. So unfortunately, they weren't meant to be wild animals. They're meant to be domestic.
Right. Thank you. I think once you told me that you even seen a series of research projects about how difficult it is to actually re-release those feral cats. Thank you.
Yes, and actually PETA, who is very anti-euthanasia and pro-animal life, I would say, they do not support the trap, neuter, and release either because it's just too dangerous for the animals and for the community.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other comments or questions?
I do want to just make one other comment. I just want to put a big plug in. Like I said, we were able to issue out over 800 spay and neuter coupons, and that's because of our thrift store that we have downtown. And we have recently moved. We are now in the old Western Stationer building at 703 North Bullard. Opening day is tomorrow, and we have a grand opening on March 2nd, this coming Saturday, and we are really looking forward to having the big space and a really good location downtown to continue generating support for the Humane Society and for our spay and neuter program. So come shop. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Next on the agenda is staff reports. First report will be by Fire Chief Lambert.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Recently, there has been some concern over a very prominent addition to the skyline in the town of Silver City with the Mountain View Senior Living Apartments. And the fire safety that we may be imposing upon them. There's been some citizens that are nervous that there is not regulation happening there. So first, I'd like to mention that the Silver City Fire Department is dedicated to being actively engaged in the community through public education and fire prevention. That is the beginning of our mission statement. That being said, we have met with the contractors of that, that construction site and every other commercial construction site within city limits before construction begins to discuss the fire safety of their site. All commercial projects in the town of Silver City are required to follow the existing fire code. That fire code has several statements specifically for construction and demolition sites. The first of those requires vehicular access for fire trucks and emergency vehicles. Rest assured that we meet with the superintendent at the Mountain View Senior Living Apartments, if not weekly, bi-weekly, to make sure that those emergency access lanes are open and accessible, and they're not blocked by construction material or equipment. The second of those statements is that they must maintain a means of access and egress for individuals, not just vehicles. While we're meeting with the superintendent, we do verify that. Beyond that, the town requires that they have portable fire extinguishers within 75 feet of travel distance in every commercial construction project in the city. We do verify that. We do monitor it. And I think this goes unsaid that we've performed this action for a multitude of years. Just with a very prominent change to the skyline, the concerns have come up. So tonight, I just wanted to step forward and assure everyone that we have taken all reasonable steps to ensure the safety of both the construction workers, first responders, and any citizens that may be in the area of any of these construction projects. I would entertain any questions if you may have any, and if not.
Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, so are there construction codes that limit, like sprinkler systems, or is it fire extinguishers the main internal way of suppressing any fire that starts, or, it sounds like it's a big building, 69 units. There are going to be probably 100 people living there. So one of the concerns that I had heard was that, is there adequate fire code safety regulations in your expert opinion?
Yes, ma'am. There are requirements for sprinklers in a building that size. They are installing them, but during the construction phase, they're not charged with water. They are completed at this point, but if they happen to have a mishap that breaks a pipe during the construction process, we don't want to flood the building. So yes, they are installed. Sprinkler requirements are pretty stringent in our jurisdiction. Any commercial building over 12,000 square feet typically is required to have sprinklers. Any commercial assembly building over 99% occupancy is required to have sprinkler systems. So yes, there are some pretty stringent requirements there. Mountain View Senior Living Apartments does have sprinklers. They will when they're complete.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Benson?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you explain to the public how the fire department is intimately involved in making sure that the proper amount of water is available through, connections and things like that? Because as someone who's gone through a renovation recently, I know that was a topic of concern in the building that I work in, but it was all worked out and was worked out with the fire department. I just want to make sure that the public understands that they don't just get to come in and say this. The fire department has to approve the plans. The fire department has to make sure that there's enough water coming in to handle the system in the building. Could you explain it better than I can?
Certainly. Any commercial project in the jurisdiction undergoes a pretty extensive plan review process. Part of that is adequate water supply, particularly when there's going to be fire extinguishers. We work with several sets of engineers, the Community Development Department, the Water Department. We verify that there's adequate water to function for all fire protection devices that may be in a building before they even break ground. If there's not, they improve the system, which they did at Mountain View Senior Living Apartments. They did not have enough water pressure for that site initially. Their contractor, along with, I believe, the city, we have improved the water lines in the entire neighborhood in order to verify that there's enough water for that system to function. We did the same with your building on the west end. New Mexico University property. So, yes, ma'am, before any construction starts, there's a very extensive plan review and vetting process for any of these construction projects.
Thank you, Mayor. So just one last comment, if you could also talk about the fact about the fire alarm system, how for different types of buildings, like if there's something that's being used by K through 12, that requires a certain system that is different from what you would do, let's say on a university campus or in a building where you've got multiple dwelling units. I know a little bit about that, just, but not enough. But if you could explain that that's part of the review process that's done about how those fire alarm systems have to be for the type of building that they're in, that they're going to be in there and used for. So.
Certainly, detection and notification systems, which are your typical fire alarms, there's a wide variety of those, are the other side of the automatic extinguishment systems. They are actually required in more buildings than sprinklers are. There are a wide variety of those. Some of them require voice activation or voice acknowledgement. So rather than your 3-tone temporal alarm that we're all used to hearing as a fire alarm, it actually gives you directions to exit the building. The County Convention Center is one such that gives you directions where the nearest exit is. And those are all very dependent, again, upon occupant load, square footage, construction types, and occupancy itself. Schools have one requirement. Residential living institutions like these senior apartments, they have a different requirement, but they're still required. So yes, those have been installed on this, as well as every restaurant in the city does have a notification alarm. Yes, so there are two sides of the same coin. They both get reviewed very heavily in the plans review process, and I think that your average citizen entering a commercial structure doesn't look at these facilities, and so they're unaware that they're actually surrounded by them in the vast majority of buildings in this city.
Thank you, Mayor.
Any other questions? Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
At the last council meeting, our animal control officer, Ms. Vicki Tony, gave a report, and Councilor Ray asked for a follow-up report, so we'll have that now.
Good evening. When I got here, I handed out everyone a report. I went down to municipal court and I pulled 6 months worth of my citations. And from August 1st of 2018 to February 15th, 2019, I have written 92 restraint and confinement, being animals running at large, off leash, just not being restrained to the owner's property. 73 harboring unvaccinated animals, 49 spaying or neutering, meaning the animal was not spayed or neutered, 27 public nuisance, 18 owner responsible with dog bites, cat bites, or attacks on a human or another animal, 3 abandonment citations, 3 failure to license animals, 2 adequate care, 1 failure to affix tags, rabies tag or license tag, 1 vicious animal, 1 noise complaint, and 1 of keeping too many animals. Attached is also all those citations if you wanted to go back and look. Does anyone have any
Any questions or comments?
Those are not really.
Councilor Bettis?
Could you
also kind of comment on what the chief is holding up? Yeah, just for the public, who might see
Okay,
it.
the chief's holding a map of my most frequented calls, whether it be, well, the feral cat colonies are on there. All the feral cat colonies, whether they have been taken care of or in the process of being taken care of. The red ones are the dog bites or cat bites that have been either taken care of or in the process of being taken care of. The green ones are animals that have been running at large frequently. They're my most frequent running at large areas. There's the pink ones are welfare checks for animals that get called in that don't have adequate shelter. Some people call in that they don't have dog food, water. Single point tie, we still have kind of an issue with at times. Some people don't know that single point tie is no longer allowed. Trolley runs only. And then the purple one is the noise complaints that are few, but there's still some.
Councilor Ray?
Thank you. Also, that graph right there pertains to all of Silver City, correct?
Yes.
And so it's citywide.
That's a citywide, yes, citywide map.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Good job.
And Councilor Medicine?
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. How many single point tie issues have come up? Didn't see it outlined separately on the,
Yeah, I don't have it because that would fall under restraint and confinement.
okay.
There's been a handful of them.
So the word is getting out?
The word's getting out, yeah.
Okay.
And it's always helpful, people call them in so that I can go and inform the owners and give them the time to comply.
And you give them the information about how to set up a trolley
Yes.
system so that the animal won't kind of wrap itself around?
Yes.
So, great, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Councilor Smith?
Thank you, Miss. I didn't get to ask you this in advance. I hope it's not too much out of left field, but how much of your job is really educating the public about what it is that they should be doing?
75% of my job is education.
Yeah, so it's not so much that you're punishing people, you're really educating people.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councilor Medicine?
Just one more quick thing. I talked to you about this before the meeting, and I think that, or at least I think I talked with the chief about it, and he said that you had found, along with Mr. Scavron, somewhere in the information about dog defecation,
Yes.
and that hopefully we can then include this in the ordinance as a nuisance. It's somewhere else, is that correct, Mr. Scavron?
It's already covered in the municipal code.
Okay, so it doesn't need to be added into this section?
No.
Okay, because that was one of the requests from Councilor Kano, which I think most of us agreed with, was the issue of people not removing their dogs or animals' waste.
Droppings.
Waste. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Thank you.
Next is a legislative update by Assistant Town Manager, Mr. Marshall.
Mayor and council, I'm gonna try to give you a very high-level review. Last week, Ann was asking me if I could include a report in your packet, and that report changes hourly. So had I put something in your packet Thursday, it would be very out of date today. It's probably, had I done it this morning, it would be out of date by now. So there's about 74 bills that I'm directly tracking. I added a couple today, so probably 76. I've got about 6 basic topics that I'm going to go over. The elections, as many of you are well aware of, there was a major election reform bill passed last year that was in excess of 200 pages. And there is currently on the table in Santa Fe another major election reform that is closer to 400 pages? 470. Yes. So it looks like the election code is, well, you can call it what you want, call it under attack or being upgraded, but there will not be any accommodations coming forth that does not appear at this point for the town of Silver City to remain on an annual election cycle. The next group of topics that I have is basically under tax reform, and there's several options out there. None of them seem to be moving very far, but if you look at House Bill 6, that's the one that had a hearing this week, and it appears to be a combination of several different attempts over the years, and they've put those together to try to come up with another major tax reform bill. It's a House bill, and it's still just came out of its first committee, so it's got a long road to hoe in 3 weeks. Along with tax reform is gas tax. There are several bills out there to restore the funding levels that are out there. A lot of our road funds, statewide, county, municipal, and state, have taken several large hits over the last multiple years, and so there's several options out there to restore the actual dollars that are coming in so that we can maintain our streets and roads. Some of those are obviously going to have some big concerns. For municipal government, they're passing the buck down to the town councils and county commissions, and it will either be your option or it will be by referendum. So it's always interesting what they choose not to centralize. The grocery receipts tax itself, there's a couple of bills out there that are pertinent to municipalities. Right now, if you look, I think there's 8 increments, there's like 8 different sections with multiple increments in some of them on the municipal side for grocery receipts. So what they're considering is making those all general. So they would all be, the entire amount would not be allocated to specific line items that they chose. And that's really important and allows you the flexibility to adjust the town's budget according to our actual need versus some sort of ratio that Santa Fe chose for the entire state. So that's really a good bill for us. However, they are maintaining in that ratio, there's a percentage that is by council choice and a percentage that is by referendum. So that will be maintained within the general GRT allocation or allowance. They're also changing most of the names from grocery receipts tax to sales tax, and that's in line with what's to come from tax reform. There's several bills out there regarding the recreational use of marijuana, and there's up to, I believe it's a 16% tax on recreational marijuana. That would definitely be an impact on the entire state's overall revenues. I'm not confident at this point in guessing which one's going to float to the top, but there's several options, several different ways. Some of it supports small business and entrepreneurs, and some of it, well, there's one out there that has recreational marijuana to be sold in state-owned stores. I guess the state wants to go into the marijuana business. The next topic that is really important is our regional water system, and I testified this morning in committee, House Bill 417, which would have completed the funding needs for the regional water system for Grand County, serving about 26,000 residents, initial sole source of water for the town of Hurley, and providing water security for the Tri-City and points in between all of our water associations that surround. And that bill, the funding was to come out of the Arizona Water Settlement Act, CAP entities funds, and it was tabled this morning in committee, so it's likely to remain there to die. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Councilor Cano?
Can you give an update on House Bill 220 and 255, because I know people will be interested in that.
So, House Bill 220 is a determination of discharge effect on groundwater. This is one of the bills that's been in the news locally. That bill is currently sitting in the House Judiciary Committee, and it's not on the calendar. So that bill was probably not going to move anywhere anytime soon. However, as the last week approaches, it's very, very unpredictable to tell what's all of a sudden going to jump up and run. So if you're concerned about that bill, just continue to monitor it and keep an eye on it and provide your input. The House Bill 255, financial assurance under the Mining Act, that bill is sitting on the House calendar and has been rolled over for the last 3 days on the House calendar.
Any, Councilor Bedison?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's really important for the folks in Silver City and other, the public to understand that the concern with the gas tax is the fact that currently the bulk of the money that the town of Silver City uses to maintain our roads comes from the general fund, from the GRT. So that we're essentially taking gross receipts tax to do road projects rather than using any sort of form of gas tax. And I think, either you or Manager Brown can talk to that, but we did allocate a certain percentage of GRT to be able to do that.
It was property tax.
Property tax, that's what
Yes, we generated approximately $240,000 from gas tax, which is 2 cents per gallon sold in town. About 4 years ago, I believe we did increase property tax by 1 mil and dedicated that to the gas tax fund, street maintenance fund. We changed the name. And so we generated about $400,000 a year for street maintenance. Just think about it. When we did 32nd Street this year, it cost us $180,000 for that one project. We could have used half of our maintenance fund to do that one street, but we had set funds aside from previous years to pay for that, as you said, gross receipts tax. So by far the majority of the money that is spent on city streets, whether it be for all the employee salaries, is paid out of general fund, which is gross receipts tax. So we got about $400,000, a little over $400,000 that right there for employee salaries, a little bit of operational funds, and then equipment maintenance and operation. And then the gas tax, most of that is used directly for street maintenance. And any little bit that we can get from gas tax or to help with the streets, we could really use it, because we're pulling a lot of money away from the general fund to subsidize street maintenance.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
Mayor, I wanted to bring one more thing up. I see Mr. Gamboa's in the audience, and we all have a concern about Highway 180 between here and Deming. And I did go have some discussions while I was in Santa Fe regarding 180 and state highway funds. And there, as you can imagine, the roads in the east side of the state, southeast, are in horrible condition because we're selling so much oil and they're transporting it via truck. So they are dumping a ton of money into the state highway funds. And I think the message that I'm getting back is the money for Highway 180 should be available in this budget. We are going to need to campaign for that through the Transportation Commission. So keep that on your radar, that we need to pursue that.
And that's very important what James said about following up and making sure that we stay on top of that, because we did have the money for it once before, in 2005 or 7, I believe. And then that money was moved from 180 to northern New Mexico for some other projects. Just like we had money for the wallet as well. So all of that money got swept and moved up north. And so if we really want to keep it, we need to try to make sure that they move on it fast and make sure it stays down here. So the public needs to be on top of that.
Councilor Edison?
Thank you. So, as lawmakers, we were told that, at Grant County Day, we were told that they had to do a new study because the original study would not work, so they had already allocated $2 million to redo the study. And that was something that, that they'd already worked on that, but that they had to do the study first in order to replan what they were going to do, because they couldn't use the one that was under, that money, I can't remember, it didn't come from.
GRIP?
Yeah, from GRIP, and apparently they have to redo it because of the number of years that has passed. So my impression from what I was told is that we'll have the money for the study, and then we're going to have to seek to get funding to actually get it done. So is that in contradiction to what you've heard, James? Because it
No,
seems...
It's not in contradiction.
But we're going to have to...
We need to let them do their study,
And then... get the money.
and let's start campaigning to get the funding to implement that study while the state is sitting on $1 billion in surplus.
Well, I'm hoping that we can all work together in the county, citizens and municipalities in the county, to get that money, to get that done. So, hopefully we can all do that, send letters, so, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other staff reports, Mr. Brown?
No, sir.
Thank you. Move right along to agenda item 9, public hearings. 9A, entitled Approval/Disapproval of an Ordinance Number 1276, amending Appendix C, Land Use and Zoning Code of 2010, Article 1, General Provisions, Sections 1.3.1, 1.5.2, Article 2, Definitions, Section 2.2, Article 3, District Regulations, Table 3.2, Section 3.3.2C, 3, and Section 341C, 14, Table 3.34.2, Section 3.4.2A, 7, Article 5, Development Standards, Section 5.9.1, B, 5.9.2A, 6, Section 5.15, Article 6, Administration, Section 6.2.12A, Table 6.3.1, Section 6.3.14 of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. The Town Council will serve as the hearing board, and I, as mayor, will be the presiding officer. The hearing will be conducted as follows. The town staff shall present a brief synopsis of the proposed amendments to the Land Use and Zoning Code and describe the actions and recommendations of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I will then permit the councilors to question staff, and after that questioning has been completed, I will ask for public input as to the substance of the proposed amendments. Who will be presenting the proposed amendments to the Land Use and Zoning Code? Ms. Jamie Embick, our Community Development Director.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. This project began with our update to our comprehensive plan, which was carried out in 2017. One of the tasks that I was set with that plan was to update the land use code. So this has been about a 6-month process, and the county commissioners have been notified. It's also had a public hearing with the Planning and Zoning Commission on their December 4th meeting. And you have before you their notice of decision and the changes which are in the ordinance. Some of them are as minor as updating years from, for instance, Article 1, Section 1.3.1, updating 1996 to 2017. Other of them, we've added definitions such as short-term rental unit and tiny house. These terms were not in common use at the time of the 2010 Land Use Code. We've also amended the use table to allow those in certain zoning designations. We have discussed with the Planning and Zoning Commission the necessity that in the past has been people needed to get a variance to have a wall or a fence over 6 feet tall. We've changed that to 8 feet tall because they have to get a permit with CID for anything over 6 feet. Most people don't want anything over 8. They just want privacy in their yard. So that is a couple of sections. We removed the height limit of 50 feet from commercial, highway, and industrial, and so we adjusted that table. The biggest section that had the most change was Section 5.15 signage, and that was due to a Supreme Court case. So most of our sign code is completely changed. And the last section is adding specific requirements to notice of decision from the Planning and Zoning Commission, so that they have to specifically state what findings that they met to meet their decision. Do you have any questions for me?
Any questions? Yes. Councilman Smith?
Thank you, Ms. Embick. I have a number of questions. So the terms short-term rental and tiny houses were added, but there was also language added about where those could be.
Yes.
Okay. So could you give a little bit of background on those, please?
Sure. So in the last few years, these have become a popular topic. They weren't really in use much in the 2010 Land Use Code. So you'll notice it starts on page 2 and it's page 3 of the ordinance. We're allowing tiny homes in the residential categories, not allowing them in the commercial categories or industrial. And the short-term rentals are allowed in the residential categories, conditional use in the light commercial and highway commercial, and not allowed in industrial. So what we did was compared other residential uses and made it similar to that.
So short-term rental are commonly known as like vacation rental by owners.
Yes.
Those things.
Yes, and so we've adopted the definition that the state of Mexico uses,
Oh, good, thank you.
which I think is up for change this session. So,
That bill was passed and signed by the governor,
so we'll have to adjust that.
so that will have to be addressed at some point.
Yes.
But we're on that because it's important to the
Yes.
health of our community. And I know that I've had a number of questions about tiny houses. And I know that from some previous research that you have been looking into the CID division and that they had adopted the tiny house appendix of the International Residential Code.
Yes.
And so, are we using the same kind of language that is being used
Yes.
there? Okay, so tiny houses are houses that are 400 square feet or less, and there's a list of things that they have to be inspected and be legal.
Yes.
This means that in those areas that are in the table, they could be started and become part of our population.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. Last question, because it is a perennial topic, and that is, could you please give a little overview of what the change is going to be about signs?
Yes, and we worked with Mr. Scavron on this one. Our sign code was very specific, and with the court ruling, we had to remove almost all of that because you can only regulate sign and size and location. So we had to remove the majority of our regulations that dealt with what they said and how long they could be up, temporary signs, that kind of thing. So we're dealing with location and size now, and that's it. And Mr. Scavron can answer any legal questions about that.
Thank you. So I don't know if this is going to be for both of you or one of you. I did notice that it talks about clear sight triangle, dangerous signs, things like that, but I don't see anything that really addresses placing a sign in a handicapped egress or access, meaning in the pathway of a ramp or a dip in the sidewalk in order to allow handicapped persons to get up. But I don't see that in here. And is that something that...
I'm pretty sure that's covered elsewhere in the code without, you can't block a sidewalk.
Yeah, that's covered by obstruction of sidewalks.
So that's elsewhere in
Yes.
the code rather than in the sign code?
Yes,
Okay.
that's in the streets and sidewalks section.
Because that has been an issue in the past where folks will put it really in the, in the dip, in the sidewalk or on the ramp, or, affix it to the ramp in some way. So, okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Are there any persons in the audience that wish to comment upon the matter at hand? There being none, do I hear a motion? Councilman Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move to approve of ordinance number 1276, an ordinance amending Appendix C, Land Use and Zoning Code of 2010, Article 1, General Provisions, Section 1.3.1, 1.5.2, Article 2, Definitions, Section 2.2, Article 3, District Regulations, Table 3.2, Section 3.3.2, C3, and Section 3.4.1C, 14, Table 3.34.2, Section 3.4.2A, 7, Article 5, Developmental Standards, Sections 5.9.1B, 5.9.2A, 6, Section 5.15, Article 6, Administration, Section 6.2.12A, Table 6.3.1, Section 6.3.14 of the Town of Silver City Municipal Code. With findings.
Thank you.
With findings and recommendations from the staff.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Councilor Bettis?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Is the hearing board now prepared to vote? Councilor
I do
Bettis?
have one quick question. Do we have to state each finding number?
Maybe I misheard Counselor Amos Smith's comment, but I said, did you say incorporating the findings?
And recommendations.
Yeah, incorporating the findings and recommendations of planning and zoning.
Okay,
That should be part of the motion.
so can I amend it to add incorporating the findings?
The second person
I agree.
agrees. Yes.
Okay, so then I'd like to amend my final sentence, incorporating the findings and recommendations of staff and the findings and recommendations of planning and zoning commission.
Second the amendment.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is the hearing board now prepared to act?
Yes, sir.
Roll call, please, Ann.
Counselor Benson?
Aye.
Counselor Amos Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Ray? Counselor Kano?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next is agenda item 11, approval of consent agenda. A, approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-05, adopting a fair housing policy. B, approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-06, Citizen Participation Plan, CDBG program. C, approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-07, Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Plan and Certification. D, approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-08, Section 3 Plan. E, approval/disapproval of resolution number 2019-09, CDBG Procurement Policy. Ms. Mackey?
Yes, Mayor and Councilors, this is our annual list of resolutions that we have to adopt each year. We need them for various grant applications. I did review them with the project manager of the local government division to make sure they were still current, up to date, and she verified that they all were in good shape. So I'm asking for your approval.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the council? Do I hear a motion? Councilor Bedison?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda as follows. A, resolution number 2019-05, adopting a fair housing policy. B, resolution number 2019-06, Citizen Participation Plan, CDBG program. C, resolution number 2019-07, Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Plan and Certification. D, resolution number 2019-08, Section 3 Plan. E, resolution number 2019-09, CDBG procurement policy.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilor Amos Smith?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion as stated.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Roll call.
I'm sorry, we need a roll call. This is a resolution. Roll call, please, Ann.
Thank you. Counselor Benson?
Aye.
Counselor Amos Smith?
Aye.
Counselor Ray?
Aye.
Counselor Kano?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next is item 12, new business. 12A is the approval/disapproval of a public celebration permit application and waiver of NMSA 1978 60-6B-10 for alcohol sales near a church for the annual meeting of the Archaeological Society of New Mexico to be held at the Murray Hotel, 200 West Broadway, Silver City, New Mexico, on April 26th through 27, 2019, with alcohol service from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. on April 26, and from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. on April 27. Liquor license holder, La Esperanza Vineyard, LLC, 100 De La O San Lorenzo, New Mexico 88041. Mr. William Hudson will make his presentation.
Thank you, Mayor Ladner and members of the council. I'm here to request approval of the public celebration permit for that weekend of Friday, April 26th through 27th, permitting the sale of wine and beer at the Murray Hotel. The Grant County Archaeological Society is hosting the annual meeting of the Archaeological Society of New Mexico. The license holder is Grant County's La Esperanza Vineyard, the Members Valley, and we're requesting the permit for each of the 2 evenings. The Friday evening event is a welcoming reception from 5 until 7 p.m., after which participants will be dining in our many fine downtown restaurants. On Saturday, there's a celebratory banquet from 6 until 9 p.m. honoring archaeologists for their work. La Esperanza Winery is providing all necessary staff and security from their list of authorized licensed servers. And I believe we have all of the necessary documentation in front of you. The application, the request by La Esperanza of the Alcohol and Gaming Division, the letter of waiver from St. Vincent de Paul Catholic Church, etc. If I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to do so.
Any questions, comments? Councilor Edison?
Just a real quick question, Mr. Hudson. It appears that the alcohol service on Friday begins at 5 and ends at 7. And then on Saturday, it begins at 5 and it ends at 8, even though the banquet goes until 9.
The actual request that La Esperanza submitted was to end it at 9. I misstated on the letter that I sent to you because we've had to submit or have to make changes in our scheduling.
Okay, I'm actually looking, there's event times, but then there's alcohol service begin times. Those are two different things on the thing, and on the alcohol service begin times on what we have in front of us, it states that it begins on Friday at 5 and ends at 7, and then on Saturday it begins at 5 and it ends at 8. So, Mr. Scavron, can he adjust that? And you'll have to adjust that before leaving.
Right, okay.
And get and I think Mrs. Whitmar should know that that's going to happen, because she's the owner representative, right, of the building.
Do you have authority to make the changes that we're talking about?
I have the authority to make the changes for the Grant County Archaeological Society, yes.
You can do an approval pending that Ms. Whitmarsh be notified, and if she has an objection, she can contact the town manager.
Okay.
So ending at 9 will be...
Well, I just want to make sure that we're doing it within what they think the event time is going to be, because, so the motion should probably say that, when is the event for Friday? 5 to 7?
Friday is
or
from 5 to 7.
Okay. And then Saturday, it's from...
They will actually be serving from 6 to 9.
You don't want to keep it at 5 to 9?
Well, between 4:45 and 6 o'clock, we will be shooing everyone out of the ballroom in order to change over the venue from seating to banquet facility.
Okay, so that means then that, so that means that on Saturday, you would like the adjustment to be, which would be in the motion, Saturday service begins at 6 p.m. and ends at 9 p.m.
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
So that's still a 3-hour block?
It's still a 3-hour block.
But it's more accurate to make sure that that adjustment's made.
I understand.
And then do it pending Ms. Whitmarsh's approval.
Yes?
I would say that, maybe make it affirmative that she has to call in and say it's fine, rather than a lack of hearing from her is implied to be approval. So you might ask her to give the town manager a call, tell her that she's aware of the change and it's fine with her.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Hudson? Thank you, sir. Are there any questions or comments from the general public? Do I hear a motion? Councilor Ray?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve of a public celebration permit application and a waiver of NMSA 1978 60-6B-10 for alcohol sales near a church for the annual meeting of the Archaeological Society of New Mexico to be held at the Murray Hotel, 200 West Broadway, Silver City, New Mexico, on April 26, 27, 2019, with alcohol services from 5 to 7 p.m. on April 26, and from 6 to 9 p.m. on April 27. Liquor license holder, La Esperanza Vineyard LLC, 100 De La Bon, San Lorenzo, New Mexico, 88041.
Thank you. Do I hear a second? Councilor Kano?
I will second that motion, Stephen.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next item is 12D, the approval/disapproval to cancel the regular council meeting scheduled for March 12, 2019. Anyone want to make any comments before I ask for a motion?
Just briefly, I've requested a cancellation because I will be out of town attending the National League of Cities Congressional City Meeting in Washington, D.C. as the president-elect. I'm not president yet of the New Mexico Municipal League. We'll be meeting with our congressional delegation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilor Bedison was trying to see if we could rearrange something, but we couldn't. Our schedules were too conflicting. So, do I hear a motion?
Mayor, well, first I'm going to say that this also is a good thing for me because I will be having another surgery, so that'll give me a couple more days to recover.
Okay, thank you. Do I hear a motion? Councilor Kano?
I move to approve of canceling the regular council meeting scheduled for March 12, 2019.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This concludes the business of the town of Silver City. I'll entertain a motion.
To adjourn?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Ray?
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Mr. Mayor, I second the motion.
Councilman Smith. Any discussion?
No, sir.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. This meeting is adjourned.